Thank you everybody for attending. It's great to see you here. Thanks to Sarah and Clayton from the Little Manitou Art Gallery for this wonderful opportunity to share my presentation, Who Says We Need Fresh Air? There are over 1 million people in Canada living with environmental sensitivities. In short, environmental illness, or environmental sensitivities as it's known in Canada, is where a person has adverse reactions to everyday products that we use in our environment, such as perfume, deodorant, toothpaste, building materials, off-gassing from new materials, such as couches, clothing, furniture, and so much more. Multiple organ systems can be affected. The effects can be and are debilitating. In Who Says We Need Fresh Air, you will experience a series of comments and insights from people around the world who live with an environmental illness. Many are homeless and can't find medical care and have limited family and financial support, forcing them into a life of isolation. I myself have struggled to find adequate housing for years, desperately seeking an environmentally safe place to live. Meanwhile, watching as my Facebook friends posted about their struggles with similar issues, we were all trying to find a way to cope and survive. As an artist, I knew I could help increase awareness of our situation through quotes and images. However, because of my environmental illnesses, causing unpredictable adverse reactions to the world around me, entering buildings and the use of common artistic materials proved to be a challenge. This led me to the idea of projecting my quotes and images outside using outdoor structures as my canvas. I have been working on Who Says We Need Fresh Air since late 2016, early 2017, when I started posting online asking if fellow sufferers would like to share their stories for my project. Many graciously provided quotes. Their story is my story.
Oh, I have a friend. We came from Regina, and I have a friend that has chemical sensitivities, and she wanted to hear Marie give her presentation tonight, so we came to do that.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, only one problem. I'm waiting for her to come back down here, and I'm wondering where to sit, because if I find a spot and then there's other people around, if they have any bit of scent on them, then she has to move, and so I would either have to move or sit without her.
Wow, and have you had to do anything special so that you could be around her?
Yeah, last night I aired my clothes out. I put them out on the deck and aired them out all night so that the scent wouldn't bother her when we're driving, because I came in her van, and she also put something on the seat so that my scent doesn't stay there. And I don't understand it, because I don't smell anything, but and I try really hard, but sometimes it's not enough. So we both get frustrated.
Wow, it's so nice that she has a friend like you.
Well, she's a good friend.
It really moved me. The film was excellently put together, and I really admired that she's doing all her presentations in fresh air. I love innovative ideas like that to get a message out. But it really left me afterward with a very strong feeling that we need to be really focusing on creating housing solutions that work for people who have multiple environmental sensitivities and who are really suffering from chemical allergies and problems, because having housing that works for people like that can help them to get their symptoms under control and be able to function better out in the outside world again. The Green Party really feels strongly that one of the things that Canada needs to help people who are struggling with health issues is guaranteed basic income. Often the disability programs and welfare aren't really looking after people's needs who have severe medical issues happening, because people who have severe medical issues happening as part of the reason why they're not employed is that they have a lot of work to do just finding treatments that are going to help with their issues and getting back on their feet that way. So this would enable people in situations like this. Some of the stories we heard were just so moving of how people become homeless so often and in fact end up dying on the street.
The percentage of people that affects right now is not very high, so it's not important to most of the people. Every life is important.
You guys can jump in whenever you want. Okay.
So I'm wondering if you just want to kind of go around and everyone just give their impression of the film that we saw last night. Do you want to start us off, Brian?
Sure. Well, so I'm primarily a singer-songwriter. I call myself a singer-songwriter with many irons in the fire, and I do singing and songwriting as a holistic health and happiness practice. So I'm very interested in holistic health, and I think really important. And I was present for the film last night, and I thought it was awesome to experience. I've been enjoying my friendship with Marie. And then to experience through the film how she's gone around the whole continent pretty much, making friends with people and really listening to people's stories and specific relationship to the issue that she's focusing on. And so for me, I relating to that from a place of interest in health and holistic living, I think the theme of sensitivity is very important. I think it's really a beautiful skill for us all to develop physically, emotionally, and mentally. So and then how we kind of put that back out, and what we do with that, and how to as a result of, if we're getting better, how can we make the world better as a result of us getting better, and everything can just keep going around like that. So I think awareness is a really key aspect of that. So I really appreciate this process because of the awareness that it's increasing.
Well, I really found that the film last night really spoke to me because about 6 years ago, I can't remember the exact, if it was 5 or 6 years ago, but I was working at the Lawson Aquatic Center in Regina, and there were air quality issues, and I ended up in the hospital extremely sensitive to chlorine. But I've been, since that time, I've seen every allergy specialist in the province. They say that there isn't much they can do to help me. I've had to quit teaching aquasize, and I purely teach land fitness classes now. And even while just teaching land classes, there's signs up in all the facilities I teach in that say scent-free facilities, and yet people don't realize that they are still wearing scents. Like, they seem to think that they're not, but they're wearing hairspray, or they think they're not and they've got air fresheners in their car, but it's all over them, right? So it's something that I deal with quite readily, and I didn't expect really to experience the film as personally as I did, but as I was listening to these stories of people who have even more adverse reactions than me, I just thought, I battle with this on a daily basis. It's something like I can leave the house feeling healthy and come home after teaching a 1-hour class with a migraine headache, just because one of my students decided to wear perfume that day. And so I thought, for people who are afflicted so heavily that they can't leave their house at all, my heart just kind of really broke for them, because I just understand the struggle, and then thought, look how much worse that is. So it really kind of made me feel teary.
Yeah, it's not just perfume. It's so ubiquitous. It's everywhere. You cannot buy hair shampoo without Mountain Fresh, which is a total misnomer, or apple or peach flavors, and people don't realize, well, they have just put perfume on. Yeah. And anybody who's sensitive, they'll react immediately. You really have to
fresheners in bathrooms, aren't those awful?
The things hanging in the cars, to make it smell like a pine tree. Yeah. Those are just gross. Like if you're sensitive, you go in there and you just notice it right away. It hits you.
Yeah, my daughter tried to hang one in her car, and I went in with a pair of rubber gloves, and and was disposing of it okay, this is we should probably treat this like we found red needles.
Yeah. We have been so marketed into believing that a company will sell you something better than what is natural. So you this is what's supplied of us because we put up with it. And I think there has to be sort of a little backlash, a little revolt, and say, you know, if it's got scent in it, why would I want to buy it? Why would I want to pay for it in the first place?
Well, if I can add an idea there, like for example, MSG. There was lots of discoveries in the 70s about how it was toxic. Very like studies on numerous rats that got toxicified, if that's even a word. Very consistently as a result of the intake of that. And the FDA, which is supposed to be protecting people, actually allowed MSG to be under 25 or 30 different names now.
Yep.
Because it's a good preservative.
Yep.
It tastes really good to the taste buds.
Yep.
Because they don't know about what's toxic sometimes in other places, and it's addictive. So from a person thinking like they're supposed to by law, of profit only if they own a company, that's a really good idea for someone trying to make lots of money, right? Mm-hmm. But it turns out that there's a lot of people being harmed that don't even know it, and they're even reading the ingredient sheets trying to be healthy people,
yeah.
and apparently natural flavors.
Natural flavors, I was going to say that,
right?
yeah.
so then you have, so then we're seeing the puzzle of how we want to be appreciative of corporate skill and interest in the world in terms of how that can express a healthy way of working together, team play, with the skills that we have. But how can we do that in a way that's awake to feeling, right? To compassion, so there's lots of wisdom in corporate action that makes lots of money sometimes. But how can it have as much compassion, as it has wisdom? And to me, that's a big issue here. So it's like that this sensitivity is showing, because we're seeing how there's a lot of people that are thinking about money and making a living and taking care of the basic stuff, and that's important, right? But how can we do that with compassion? Like to me, that's the main issue. That's one of the main issues.
Raven, we didn't go all the way around the room. Would you like to give your impression of the film?
Well, I was only able to catch the first part of it, but I did notice that there was a lot of people saying that they were homeless because of their environment and they couldn't live in it. And that really made me sad. It really touched my heart, because when I was 18 I became homeless. And so I know how hard it is to be out there alone and not by something that was your own doing, which is even harder to deal with. As an Indigenous person, I feel like it's our responsibility to take care of Mother Earth and the people that live on it, whether you're on 2 legs or 4 legs. So it's interesting, and I would love to learn some solutions.
Have you ever heard of environmental sensitivities or environmental illness?
I'm aware of signs to consider it a scent-free environment when you go somewhere, but I've never heard of any action against somebody who had scent in a place or something in the wrong place.
Yeah. It's a condition where people have adverse reactions to most common everyday products that we use, like deodorants, building materials. Like, look at me. But this is because scent transfers, and right now I don't have a washing machine or anything. Any kind of deodorants, I said that already. Clothing, new products. Like, it could be pretty much anything, and it can affect multiple body organ systems, and people are being referred doctor to doctor when really oftentimes they just need that one specialist that can help them cope and treat their multiple chemical sensitivity or environmental sensitivities or environmental illness, whichever word people want to use. And oftentimes there are no doctors for people.
I once went mattress shopping, trying to help a friend of mine, and the off-gassing chemicals from the new mattress made me so ill in the store that I ended up being extremely embarrassing, and like having to lie down on the floor of the store and then crawl out, and I threw up in their parking lot, which sounds like super gross, but like it was just, there's so many chemicals coming off that I don't know how those people could work in that building.
And mold is a big thing too, like really big.
I was I was at someone that both Marie and I have become aware of. I don't know if have you met Dr. Stephen Ginnis from the University of Calgary, is it?
Well,
Alberta?
he's in Alberta. I have not met him.
Yeah.
He's very knowledgeable and he writes a lot of good articles.
Right. Well, I was at a talk that he gave at the University of Saskatchewan, inspired by the co-created by the Integrative Medicine Center there, and he's also, I think he would probably consider himself a multiple what's the word again?
Chemical sensitivity.
MCS. Yeah, so he would probably consider himself like that in ways, and he has a lot of experience working with patients, and then also a lot of experience with the science of the actual facts of the chemicals and whatnot, and he's spoken a lot about mattresses. He's actually said it's one of the biggest problems, because I think it was in the 80s or something, there was this big paranoia about if people were smoking and left a cigarette on their bed, that it was causing fire. So they put all these flame retardants on, and then it became a rule, where they had to like do that by law, and so then all of a sudden every mattress is off gassing like huge amounts of toxins by law. Law or whatever that is, but and it's, to me, it's a living process. Law is a living experience of what's better now, what's actually better now, and I guess one thing also that Stephen Ginnis mentioned at that talk is, he didn't say conclusively, but he very humbly said, because of his astounding relationship with scientific detail to these kinds of things, because someone actually asked him, what do you think about people putting fluoride in the water? And he actually said, I can't say I know 100% the answer to that, but from all the science that I've seen, I would say at least, I'm starting to put this in my own words, but he was basically saying, I would say at least it's worth considering that it might be toxic, it might not be beneficial for us, it might not be, and then for me, when I've looked into the studies, it's basically it's a toxic byproduct of two major industries that they would otherwise have to pay for to properly dispose of. So not only are they not paying the tab on their own waste, but they're actually making money selling it and saying it's good for us. Is that true or not? Good question. That's all I'm saying.
I've heard a lot of his talks, they're really, really good. He has so many talks on just nutrition, the environment, mold, Wi-Fi, everything. They're really good. I have not met him personally, but I've heard a lot of the talks that are really good.
He's a lovely guy.
I hear that, yes. Very knowledgeable. I'd like to meet him.
I know when my children were small, they had a lot of rashes from different laundry soap and things like that, to the point where I had to actually make my own laundry soap and find something that wasn't perfumey or, which worked better than the stuff that you could buy in the store. And I noticed that a lot of children who are Métis do have eczema and skin rashes and are sensitive to different types of metals and things like that.
Well, I had the question in my mind, why is organic produce, because I've been speaking with different people in different communities, and I ran into this mindset like, oh, only rich people can have organic food, right? It's not accessible to most people. It's that, and so it's even being poo-pooed, you know, a little bit. But on the other side of that, like if we look at what happened to the word natural flavors in the food industry, right? We can see how a similar thing is starting to happen with the word organic. What does it really mean? Is it really being practiced, or is it just being said? You know, and so I had that question: why is it more expensive
But it's
when it
not
takes
really
all?
anymore.
Well, that's, you know,
Like
That's good news.
a public perception.
yes,
But I would actually challenge that because really organic food has come down in price and people just aren't making those choices. But often you can actually compare items, and organic food is a lot more accessible than, like, there was a point in time when everyone said, well, I just can't do that. But
well, that's great news. And I've heard also that a lot of farmers are not getting organically certified because you have to go through all these hoops, but they're actually doing organic practices. So even they don't have the label, but they're actually being more true to the name than some, you know. And well, but so I had this
I could
question.
tell you some weird things about organic certification, because one
Right.
of there are
Sure,
actually
sure.
some very non-organic things about that.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. So one thing that happened, I had this question in my mind as a result of a project I was part of, and about a month and a half later, when I was going to the same meeting where the question in my mind arose, the night before I was studying for the meeting, and I was watching a video by a man named Fritjof Capra, who wrote a very well-known book called The Tao of Physics in the 70s, and it really took off and became popular, and he's since been a very, very revered person in academia with this idea of systems. So he's saying our problems are systemic. We need systemic solutions. That's his base. And what he's saying is the systems are alive and changing. It's not just a machine. Like, because even in science, we had this whole process in academia where it's like everything's just a machine and it's separate. But he's just trying to remind us, no, everything's connected. Every little particle of movement anywhere is connected with everything else. And so when he was asked that question, I was watching a video of his, Fritjof Capra his name is, and he actually said one of the simple reasons why organic food is not more affordable is because the companies that are doing all the spraying and using the chemicals and whatnot are getting all the subsidies from the government. So that's interesting.
And also, processed food is cheaper than organic or even just like fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
You can buy like at Superstore or Walmart or whatever. It is cheaper to get a box of macaroni and cheese than it is to buy a bag of apples, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, as a single parent, I go shopping for groceries every week. I try not to buy processed foods because I know it's not good for us, but still, it's easier on the checkbook than it is.
Yeah.
It is buying. That's why I like to grow my own food and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's good. Yeah,
Beauty.
it's a good solution. Community gardens are great too.
And more greenhouses.
Yeah, we had organic certification at my family orchard, and one of the things that just sort of boggled my brain is that one of the rules, like, it was good that they really had a lot of paperwork you had to do, and you really need to prove that you were organic. That's, you know, to me it seems kind of crazy because I was like, why do I have to do all this work to prove that we're organic? That guy should have to do a whole bunch of work to prove that he's not poisoning you with his pesticides.
Right.
It's like, why am I doing all this paperwork?
Right.
That's the guy who's poisoning you.
Good
But,
question.
you know, I also was like, okay, this is the process, we'll do this. But one of the rules they had was that on the outside edge of your property, they wanted you to spray Roundup because they wanted to have this this patch of weed-free area on
buffer
the
zone.
A buffer zone. And I was kind of like, well, all the people who are going to want to grow organic food are going to really object to spraying Roundup around their property. Like, I refuse to do that. And so then we were trying to find all these, I think when you were working with us, Adam, like, we were trying to figure out different solutions. So we actually did like a controlled burn. Like, we were like, well, you know, if we're going to have to pick between evil things here, we'd rather, you know, burn a patch of weed-free area around here, because, like, my brain could not wrap itself around putting Roundup on our, like, even around the edge of our property. So stuff like that, it's like, I can understand why these rules are in place, but I also think, like, that's not going to appeal to organic people at all, and you have to kind of think in terms of, well, like, why are these, you know, can we come up with some other rules?
Well, I mean, if we look at lobbying, right, how much money big companies are spending on lobbying, and they're getting all the ears of the government. So there should be a fair lobbying system, perhaps. I never even thought of this until now, but you know, like, that might be a good idea, where there's no fee for lobbying. It's just like governments are actually hearing everyone equally, and then putting that into a form of action and lawmaking, you know, because everyone's affected, right?
Yeah.
So everyone should be heard in the process, not just people with billions of dollars for their lobbying budgets, you know, like, which is pretty much what's happening, and it's pretty much being revealed by these kinds of rules that are being made. It's actually ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, you know. But you know,
I think it all comes down to money in the long run. Like, why things are the way they are is because of the pharmacies, the big rich people that have their hands in everybody's pockets.
Yeah.
Right? And that's pretty much what this world is run on. Governments and money, and they make more money the more things you spray on your food, right?
Right.
The more poisons that are in the air, then they have doctors to fix that, right? And then you're paying for medication, and it's a big cycle.
And they're not eating that food either.
No, they're not.
And they're not even going to the same doctors. Like it's actually very unfair, and ultimately, like, to me, what's happening is the whole planet is dying in front of their eyes while they're doing these actions, and it's just like, how far do you want to take this? So these kinds of sensitivities, it's like, to me, like you said, it's a canary in the coal mine. Like, we're polluting everything. They're literally taking their own ground from under their own feet that they think that they're clinging to. So it's like, obviously it's not working. It's not working for anyone, even the people who think they're winning. Like, we gotta play win-win, or there's no game. It's that simple. That's the, like, want to talk about the law of the universe, right? Like, that just seems to me how it works, you know? So where's the win-win? You know, and to me, the win-win with this theme of sensitivity is a big part of the answer, because that means sensitivity is a beautiful thing, and when people's sensitivity gets closed, that's dangerous, you know, like it's and so it's also a skill to be able to not be too sensitive and to be able to act if you need to, right? So, but there's a balance, right? So we're seeing a teaching, I think, in relationship to that, right? But we gotta know the balance, and the results of the actions are showing us the necessity for a better, more skillful and sensitive balance, right?
Yeah, and adverse reactions is like a really good word that we use a lot too, as opposed to sensitivity sometimes, because some people then they get a different idea as soon as you say sensitivity.
I'm just sensitive.
I know, and it's like, so then someone said to me, well, okay, how about start saying adverse reactions?
Yeah.
Because the word sensitivity, people would say, yeah, too sensitive. And I'm like,
Right.
That's too bad.
yeah.
That's basically what their answers are.
Go somewhere else, or just stay here for a while. And meanwhile, it could be whatever organ system for me in my body is being affected. Then I can't think, I can't function. Then how many days later do I have to now pretend to act normal and try and function in society, but yet still be sick from the environment? It's too hard on my system to even do that. And so many people in Canada and around the world are housebound, and some cannot really go indoors, some cannot really go outdoors. And housing, like he said, or everybody's heard, is the biggest challenge, along with adequately trained medical doctors, and even access into public spaces like transportation, you know, everywhere. And they're forced into a life of isolation, which I feel we're social beings.
Well, My children and I were the first people living year-round at the Creek Sustainable Living Project, and I really, again, listening to the film last night, I thought, we need more spaces like that. We need to have spaces where there are less rules, because it's actually quite hard in a regular urban setting or in a small town to even get permission to build something like an earthship, or to build maybe an earthship would be a bad example because you might not be able to handle some of the materials even in that, but completely sustainable homes that aren't going to off-gas. And yet when you try to actually go do that, the government actually won't let you. And so I think that something that we really need throughout Canada is more spaces where land is set aside and people can develop clean, green, sustainable housing options, because I've seen some really innovative housing solutions for different needs recently, and I've seen a wonderful housing situation that's set up for people who are living with disability, and they're able to sort of buy condos, and one family I know, the parents are buying one condo, and then their son, who has Down syndrome, is buying another, and they're all going to be able to kind of be living together as families, but the children have their own separate space, the parents have their own space, and then there's common areas. So I thought that's a really great innovative solution to their situation. Well, people with multiple chemical sensitivities, we need to, within other settings so people can access services, have some of those kind of options set up, but geared for people with multiple chemical sensitivities. And the other thing I took away last night, because my brain's thinking of solutions, right? is really one of the quotes from the film that just struck me so strong, is that trying to find medical help for this situation is that's a lot of work, right? Like, I know my brother just spent 5 years recovering from serious injuries, and it was like a full-time job. Like, my mother and I, mainly my mother, supported him during that long time period, because it was just a full-time job, just getting to doctor's appointments and looking after that end of things. It's a full-time job when you walk into a building and it makes you sick, just trying to find somewhere to live. I personally know this. Like, I've sometimes avoided moving or moved too often because the building that me and my family were living in was making me sick. So I've personally experienced this. That's a lot of work, going and viewing a building and walking in and oh, yeah, my eyes are itchy. Yeah, no, starting to feel a little floaty here. Can't live in this one. Well, normal people just go in and go, yeah, the size of these rooms looks pretty good for me, and they've decided to move into a place. So that's like a full-time job as well. And then just, all of us, it costs us a full-time job just to live. So people under this situation, that was the big quote that stuck up for me from this film, they are pretty much doing 3 full-time jobs while feeling really ill. So Canada needs guaranteed basic income so that people who are afflicted with conditions like this are in a position where they know that they've got that guaranteed basic income, and they can do those other big jobs, right? Finding the doctor and finding a safe place to live. So these are some things that really kind of became really strong for me, is that we need spaces that are inclusive and safe for everyone in our society. And this is just one facet of that problem that we live in, right? We need to just keep making sure that Canadian spaces are accessible.
Maybe making natural things more accessible too. Instead of all the perfume processed stuff that you could buy at big chain stores like Superstore and Walmart and things like that. Just having natural solutions,
Yeah. And your idea about the housing is really good. They created that place in Snowflake, which was 4 separate houses for people with electromagnetic hypersensitivity and MCS, multiple chemical sensitivity. And they had the 4 buildings out in the middle of nowhere. And then they had this separate building, which I'm not sure if it's called the maintenance building.
Like a common building.
Well, actually, no, it's just that common building would be great.
Yeah.
It's just for washing machines and I guess the electrical type stuff.
So then you're getting that out of people's houses too. Yeah,
Because it's
it's
also
brilliant.
electrical, right?
Yeah.
So they can't have
Any of that there.
Right.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own washing machine because things transfer, and this is a medical need. So
Right.
I also talk about assistive devices. Well, the meters that we use to measure, like a tri-field meter to measure like for cell towers or
Yeah.
for anything electrical, meters for other various things.
Yeah.
Proper bedding, proper clothing is an assistive device for us. Proper things, I'm not sure the right word, to use for computers, the electrical devices, to
Yeah.
shield them. Housing is a medical necessity and an accessibility issue for people, and they just can't even get housing. But I like when I went there, it totally impressed me. Like, it can be done. It was done there.
Some of the eco-village projects that I've researched in South America and the ones I visited in BC actually have a separate small building set up just for, this is where the computers are, so that people can go to that space, email their friends and relatives, go on Facebook, whatever they want to do, and still stay in touch with the world, but those energy spaces aren't being contaminated into their homes, right? So I thought that was a really great solution, because again, like this one eco-village in South America, you just walk through the woods, and there's this separate building that's not near people's residences, it's not near the gardens, it's just, this is where the cell tower is, and people just leave all their devices there. Like everyone's devices are just, that's where they hang out. Nobody actually communicates with the outside world from their homes or the common space area. And so those are some kinds of things that, would be kind of interesting to think about too. And one of the things that people said, we just were thinking about the health aspects. We became concerned. We wanted to see how would our health improve if we just specified that kind of use to certain times. And then what they said is, what we found is all of a sudden we started having coffee hangouts again. And it was like we went back to 1993, and the community said, this was so great because all of a sudden we found that music blossomed and people were getting together and just talking more because they were, they had to walk to this building to go use electronics.
That's awesome.
I like the idea it's cheaper too. It's like
Yeah.
you have to
It's
have
shared.
the internet in one small
Yeah.
area, and you can be stronger there.
Yeah.
So,
Hardwired
it's
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, another one of those shared cost things. Like,
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
How can we do it the best? Yeah, the easiest, rather than like a weak signal everywhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing. Oh, sorry.
No,
Sorry.
I'm totally done.
We need like an international classification of diseases code or a billing fee code, because right now the doctors, you go in, multiple chemical sensitivity or anything to do with mold exposure, any of that or none of it has a billing fee code. So you walk into one of the doctors, it could be diagnosed as psychiatric, diagnosed as gynecologic, bladder, like whatever. You could be sent to like 4 or 5 different doctors. Like me, I had 4 or 5 different specialists in a day,
Wow.
and I could not take transit. In the end, I had to walk to them, and this was in Winnipeg. It was really hard, and I just quit going. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. In the long run, I actually became stronger in a certain way, and I realized that the doctors couldn't do anything. And in the beginning, I would be so upset. And now I realize it's my environment for me. Like I would go to a doctor, and if I'm really reacting, it will show up on a blood test. And if I'm not at another point in time, it doesn't. But it's not a blood test for multiple chemical sensitivity. It's like neutropenia, lymphocytopenia, those kind of things were showing up.
Yeah.
And even recently when I had acute renal failure, being in a place that had mold and fragrance, and I chose to leave the environment as opposed to going into emergency, and my I guess kidney counts is how I say it, I'm not sure the right words, went back to normal within 4 days. So for me, that's how I'm affected so bad. So it's affecting all the different organ systems in my body.
Wow.
So for me, I need that clean environment, or safe, clean environment. And
Yeah.
that's what we need, because it's like my body isn't taking in the nutrients until I have that environment. And
Right.
that's the beginning part of my healing, is that environment. Then we start going to water, nutrition. I'm not sure if the right word is detoxifying, but that's the word I'm going to use. I'm probably using the wrong word. And then possibly maybe I could start living a normal life. Maybe my cognition or whatever, the cognitive function might start getting better because it's affecting, you know, all that too. So I'm hoping that through what I'm doing, and supplements will be part of it, that I can possibly get better enough so I can function better in the world instead of leading a life of avoidance and isolation, which is quite the challenge.
I mean, to me, the beautiful thing is like that. These issues may be and may likely be true for a lot of people, like, right? And so all of a sudden you got, like, you're just trying to take care of your puzzle, right? Like, that's like, but then all of a sudden the environment that's created is like, oh, more and more people, like, and that works, you know, having an internet station in certain places and everywhere else, like, there actually is off-grid relief, you know, from the 5G or whatever it is, you know, and so all of a sudden the spaces that are being maybe created for that are an example of how that actually works. But so then you have a visitor come, it feels better here, maybe I'll do this in my place, you know. Like, I guess maybe to or we're wheeling around to a conclusion, maybe, because I know we got to get going too.
Yeah, I might want to, if you have any comments like, from looking at that, if there's any, just, okay.
We're maybe thinking about cherry pickers and pesticides being something they lose their jobs for that. When some people are sensitive to pesticides and some people aren't, and they have to lose work, some of work, but it's just a cherry picking thing.
But still, yeah, and it's outside job, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And they kind of want that outside job, and then you lose it.
You'd think that would be the space to try it.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
But then they use the pesticides and lots of them do.
I had a job at an outdoor job, and it considered the safety of other people in a way. And someone came by with fragrance. Well, I couldn't even figure out, you know, how to hook up the things for this person to be safe. I had to fire myself because the fragrance hit me so hard that I couldn't think. And if somebody else's safety is at risk, I can't do it. And I figured, this is an outside job. I can do this. And nope, as soon as the fragrance hit, couldn't think, couldn't retain new information. I could just spit out old information about multiple chemical sensitivity. And that's how it affects me.
Before we wrap it up, seeing as you're an aspiring politician, and I hope you get elected, guaranteed annual income is something that has been kicked around in Parliament for a long, long time. There have been studies on it.
With the amount of money they've spent on the studies, they could have done it by now.
Yeah, you know what? Life should be a right for every person. You know, so bring that up. Bring that up when you're in there, and you will be in there.
Thank you. Well, I personally feel really strongly about guaranteed basic income. Countries that have actually put guaranteed basic income in place have shown that all the things that Canadian politicians and the Canadian public have said about it, well, if we do that, people just will decide never to work, weren't true. People chose once they realized that they were in a position where, okay, my job is no longer available to me, but I've got this guaranteed basic income to fall back on. You know what happened? Instead of them choosing not to work, they chose to go back to post-secondary education, because a lot of those countries that have employed solutions like this also have free post-secondary education, which is another thing that the Greens are very much in favor of. And any country that doesn't favor having more citizens who become doctors, who become scientists, who actually pursue those kinds of secondary knowledge, is not the kind of society that's going to end up coming up with innovative solutions to the problems that we're talking about right now. And both that and the other situation that I think sort of ties into guaranteed basic income here and the other issues we're talking about is that I think our urban centers really need to implement rent controls. This is one of those topics that when I bring it up, people kind of go, oh, and they cringe a little bit. But right now in Canada, any urban center, it costs a job that would be $22 an hour, working 40 hours a week. And that's to just barely afford a 2-bedroom apartment in any city in Canada. Like, I know that I'm really struggling just to pay rent every month. Like, I luckily have some very understanding landlords, they're brothers, and they let me pay my rent as my money comes in. So I literally pay them rent all month. And then the end of the month comes and I start paying them for the next month because I've, just finally paid my rent. And so thank goodness I have that, but it's put me in a position where if my vehicle breaks down or I have any other kind of problem, there's no real extra cash sitting around there, right? I'm just paying rent. And there's no good reason why anyone working as much as I do can't just, pay rent and be sort of doing pretty okay. But what's happened is we have Boardwalk in Regina and a lot of the other major centers in the country, and some of these other very large rental companies. And in any industry, when you have giant monopolies, then things get to, the cost goes up and up and up, and it affects all the smaller guys who are just trying to keep up, because then things follow along, right? So even though the landlords are charging this amount, they might not even actually be making that much. Like, this is where it gets even crazier, is that they might just be paying the mortgage on that property as well. So these are some things that I think need to be put in place, and we need to think as a country of sort of a all hands on deck approach, and what can we do to come up with solutions for people and for our country in order to make sure that people are looked after. And once all the people are looked after, then those people will be able to turn around and look after the environment.
I want to make a couple comments too, if that's okay.
No, this isn't about you.
Hey, wait.
It is and isn't.
It is and isn't. It's about everybody, including the future people. Can I mention on here about the crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I want to go across Canada to create awareness about this medical condition. I'm looking for a cargo type van that I can revamp and make it so that I can live in it and work out of it, and any way of funding to help me do this project. So if anybody has any ideas or anybody who can help me, that would be great. I'd like to thank all you for coming here and attending, and especially because you haven't even seen it, it's great, and for all your input. And I know that you mentioned something about possibly having a brochure to hand out with maybe some quotes on one side and some solutions on another side. If anybody can think of what solutions or ideas they might want on a brochure, you can email me at whosaysweneedfreshair@gmail.com. And I think that's it for me. I'm currently planning to travel across Canada, bringing my message to people across the country. In order to do this, I am looking for an empty cargo type van that I can convert into a home and office, as my current vehicle is at its end of life and I currently have very limited resources. If you are interested in helping, please see my crowdfunding campaign on marieleblanc.net. I would like to thank my friend Manfred, who made a special trip from Winnipeg. Manfred graciously narrated the quotes in the presentation. I would like to thank Bruce Hughes and Blind Dog for providing me with the music End of Nowhere and Tall or Alone. Most of all, I would like to thank my friends of the environmental illness, environmental sensitivities community for their support. And I would like to thank all the people here who came here to see the presentation. Thank you again for attending, and again, thank you, Sarah and Clayton, for supporting my vision of tonight's presentation of Who Says We Need Fresh Air. Thank you to all my new friends I have met here in the past 2 days for our new friendships. And the content is heavy, however, I promise you there is a solution towards the end. Thank you very much.